Welcome in, welcome in. Thank you so much for joining us for our final webinar of November. Welcome and happy Restorative Justice Month. We're going to give people about a minute to get joined. But if you would like to tell us in the chat where you're watching from, that is always great. We have an exciting webinar for you today with Brenda Waugh, Howard Zehr, and some brilliant legal and restorative minds from all over the world. So we'll get started in about a minute, but if you want to let us know in the chat from wherever you're watching, where you're watching from. Great, we got Newport, Kentucky, South Africa, welcome. All the way from Italy, Buffalo, New York. We've got Slovakia, South Carolina, Washington, D.C., truly all over the world. Tucson, Washington, D.C., welcome, welcome. From Oslo, Norway, thank you for being here. Vancouver, wonderful. Great. Thank you. Continue to introduce yourselves. I'm Demointe Wesley. I'm the Associate Director at the Zehr Institute for Restorative Justice. Thank you so much for joining us for another great webinar here during Restorative Justice Week, International Restorative Justice Week, and for this exciting topic on becoming a restorative lawyer, building a culture of connections across legal traditions. We have a fantastic legal mind and author, Brenda Waugh, to introduce a new book, a new resource, a new gift for the field. So we'll have a bit of introduction, and then we'll have a conversation with all of our panelists, including a Q&A. So have questions in mind that you can add to the chat. And then at the end, I'll have a few announcements for all of you. But without further ado, it's my great pleasure to introduce our host for this meeting, Howard Zehr. Howard Zehr is widely recognized as one of the founders and early pioneers of the restorative justice field, and in his role as director of a National Criminal Justice Resource Office, then as professor of restorative justice at the Center for Justice and Peace Building at Eastern Mennonite University, he has assisted and mentored many individuals and organizations, including Brenda, I think she would say, and he has lectured and consulted in numerous countries. And has several books, including Changing Lenses and Restorative Justice, Insights and Stories from My Journey. Howard, welcome. I'm going to turn it over to you for further introductions.
Thank you, Demonte. Yeah, it's great to be here. It's an honor, and it's something I've been looking forward to. Brenda Waugh has been practicing law for a long time, lots of different kinds of law. But the last couple of decades, she's been practicing restorative law. She's been doing some amazing things using a restorative framework and approach. And I've been after her for a long time to get this into book form so she could share it with other people, and she has done that. So I'm really excited about this new book. I think lawyers are going to find it very useful. It's both the framework, the case stories, the suggestions in this book. So today we're going to be talking about the book and things around that with a group of lawyers from around the world. So Brenda, I'm going to turn it over to you next, and you can take us to the next people.
Thank you, Howard. And I also am very delighted to be here today. It's been a very exciting restorative justice week for me with the launch of my new book, and also getting to participate in events like this webinar that we're having today. So what I wanted to do was to explore this topic with some other lawyers that I've kind of met along my journey. And so we're joined by several of my attorney colleagues that I met during my time at the Center for Justice and Peace. I've enjoyed many conversations with them that have been central to my new book. And the book is released now. It's available from Good Media Press at bookstores and online retailers. So I would like to go ahead and introduce them so we can get to discussing some of the issues that I'd like to discuss. And And by way of introduction, what I'm going to do is just ask each of them to join us and just explain a little bit about who they are, where they're joining from, and I'm going to ask them to share a little bit about what they're working on this week. Their bio will appear on the screen, and so we're going to start with Louis.
Greetings, everyone. Hi, everybody. Good to be here. Thank you, Brenda and Howard. A great pleasure to be with you. I thank also the Zehr Institute for this opportunity and for the invitation. A pleasure to get to meet Petra and Karina. And well, right now we are also doing some Restorative Week activities here in Brazil. I participated in a panel with lawyers earlier this week. And today is a very special day. It's a national holiday here in Brazil. It's a Black Consciousness Day. And I think it's important for us to, to honor that, to talk about that. I think the issue, the very complicated and important issue of racism and white privilege is something that we need to address within the restorative movement. And so today is the national holiday because of a Black leader, Zumbi dos Palmares, who died in the 700, leading a movement of enslaved people against the imperial power. So that's why today is this important holiday. And I just would like to mention people just beside Brenda and Howard that have helped us, take care of this very important issue and look at it in a humane and careful manner. David Anderson Hooker, Sujata Baliga, Fania Davis, Pumla Gobodo, Sarah Henkemann, and here in Brazil, Mari Nascimento, Samuel Pereira, to name others. So thanks to be here, and I'm looking forward for our talk.
Okay, so then I'm taking the floor, and I would like to greet you all from Prague, Czech Republic. It's also my big joy and honor to be here with you together with Brenda and Howard and with my law colleagues Louis and Karina. And I am a chair and founder of the Czech Institute of Restorative Justice, and I'm also a board member of the European Forum for Restorative Justice, which brings together law practitioners, academics, and scholars among the Europe and the whole world. And during the RJ Week this year, we are also launching a manifesto to restorative justice and human rights. And so I'm putting you in this chat like a call to join a manifesto that declares that access to restorative justice shall be recognized as a human right. And it would be great if we can celebrate the RJ Week with this step. So thank you and greetings from Prague. And I'm sending my word to Karina.
Hola, I'm Karina Chasu. Although I'm living in Spain now, this week, I came to Argentina, to the city of Ushuaia, and I've been invited and I am attending today. I've been attending and make a speech at an international congress of gender violence. It's a congress of prosecutors. And I spoke about alternatives to prosecution in these sensitive cases of domestic violence and gender violence. And of course, it came to me restorative justice concepts. And of course, I spoke about this great book. Well, so it's good to meet you all, and thank you very much to invite me.
All right. Thank you, all of you. So let's get into the conversation here a little bit. I'm going to ask each of you to briefly say, what to you is the practice of restorative law? What does the practice of restorative law mean to you? Brenda, you want to go first?
Sure, I'd be happy to. That's kind of like what the whole basis of the book is about, becoming a restorative lawyer. And so to me, I mean, after I graduated from, I went to law school in 1987 and graduated from EMU in about 2008. And while I was at EMU, I began kind of toying with this idea as to what if we could take these principles of restorative justice and integrate them into an ordinary practice of law. Both Howard and Dan Van Ness talk about the idea that you can put any practice or process on a continuum, with one edge of the continuum being not restorative at all, and the other end being very restorative. And I started to experiment with this idea of like, how do I take every person that has a legal problem that comes to me to address their problem? How do I take that, the way that it may be addressed normally, that's not very restorative, and move it to be more restorative? One example, a typical example of something like that, is the idea of using an inclusive collaborative process. That's one of the 5 principles that Howard articulates in Changing Lenses that really does provide the framework for my practice. And traditional legal work only grants certain people the ability to speak, those with legal standing. So as a restorative lawyer, I look for opportunities to expand my collaborators. Who else might be able to join in this? And that might mean other people that are in the community that are related to the client. That might mean people that care about the client. It might mean other lawyers, but I'm always looking to say who is missing at the table and who can we bring in to find a more a resolution that's really built around the stakeholders' needs and not about kind of prescriptive rules that are contained in these books. And so that's kind of one example of how I try to practice law restoratively, by moving anything I'm doing with a client into a different position in that continuum. And I'm going to pass to Karina.
Well, to say about, we all know that restorative justice practice is a procedure that places the victims and their needs at the center, and creating opportunities for meaningful participation and reparation, while, of course, fully safeguarding the guarantees and rights of the offender. Sorry, but I've been so many years a prosecutor that I have my schedule in my head. But in the purpose is really to repair harm, uphold the dignity of all parties, and reach the agreements with respectful and balanced legal framework, joining and following the values and the principles always in the people in all the cases that came to me. That's what I think restorative justice is for me. And I send this to Luis.
All right. So, well, just to be clear, I'm a criminal lawyer by training and experience, but for about 10 years, I've been dedicating myself to peace and conflict work and restorative practices, especially in the criminal justice system here in Brazil. So I think restorative practices, or the restorative justice is a human-focused practice, as obvious as it may sound. I think we must recognize law as a structure based on power relations, on the objectification of people and conflicts, dedicated to prescribed solutions, dependent on the imposition of violent means, sometimes more directly, sometimes more indirectly. And as a dear professor has taught me, we ought to remind that law is supposed to work to take care of people and not to take care of itself. So I think in this sense, pragmatically, a restorative practice of law should be based on what Shiv Viswanathan, an activist and scholar from India, would call cognitive justice, which is the recognition of knowledges and wisdoms that people bring with themselves to any type of relational dynamic. So we should include conflictual dynamics here as well, for them not to be silenced by the interposition of institutional authorities, specialists, and the grammar of law, for the people's needs to be recognized and to elicit creative ways for people to find meaningful answers for what they need and what they want. So to make it short is something that I like to bring up and show, kind of to provoke people in this Western culture of ours, To make it short, I think it's a practice that invites people to make justice with their own hands. So now I pass the word to Petra.
Okay, thank you, Luis. Well, for me, like what I imagine under restorative practice of law is like a way when we really try to put victim needs and their voices in the center, and we look for solutions and decisions that also in the same way support the offenders in accepting their responsibility, create space for it, and also like trying to address the roots of the crime and like create space like for the redress in general. In the same way, create also opportunities for restorative programs to be good part of the criminal proceedings. I think that actually like we can do this with the legislation we have mostly in general. And we can also like support really people to participate on the proceedings and to really lead us to solutions that that give meaning and sense for the whole way, for the victim, for the offender, and for the people around them. So really like to on the in legal terms on the procedural but also on the substantial part of the criminal law to bring us to solutions that the people can participate on and give them meaning for the future. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And can you believe we are right on track time-wise? This is amazing. So I'm going to ask you another question. It's a little more complicated. May have trouble doing that, but it's given your professional backgrounds, what was your view of law originally? And then how did restorative justice change that? What was your view of law originally, and how did restorative justice change that? If you can do that in short time. Brenda, you're up next again.
Thank you, Howard. And I really liked that, Louis, the making justice with your own hands, because that's really what it's about. It's like when I talk about the collaborators, it's like, yeah, that's right. How do we all become partners in creating justice out of this difficult situation? But I just wanted to comment on that. Back to the question that was asked. So, you know, when I went to law school because I really wanted to work for social justice. I wanted to be able to help the underdog. And I thought, you know, if I go to law school, I'll become a strong advocate. I'll be able to right the wrongs. I'll be able to bring justice to the oppressed people. But boy, even in law school, I already knew that there was going to be some problems. In the United States, they have a saying, I don't know if you have that in your countries too, about learning to think like a lawyer. And what that means is that we boil things down to this kind of bare bones analysis and match the fact of the case to the law. And that's the end of the analysis. And I could see that this kind of analytical, competitive, adversarial approach was taking the power away from the communities and was very much ignoring the humanity of the people involved. And this became very clear once I began practicing. I even found that when I won, clients were often harmed by participating in a system that should be helping them heal. But in other words, it didn't help them heal. It often caused them to suffer a continuing trauma. There was a pivotal moment where I was walking into the courthouse to do a jury trial involving a child sex offense, and I was going to court with the uncle. And the uncle looked at me, and I was doing a great job. I had the jury on board. I knew I was going to get the conviction. And I thought, wow, this is going just perfectly. But the uncle looks at me as we're walking into the courthouse that morning, and he says to me, you know, this is worse than going to a funeral. And I stopped and I was thinking, going to a funeral is a terrible thing. And for him, this is not a game where I'm going to win or he's going to win. This is a really very, very traumatic and difficult situation. And once I understood what this environment was like and how it could be more traumatizing for the victims after what they've already been through, I started thinking that I need to look for another way. And that's when I found restorative justice. And so I could start to see with restorative justice that I was going to be able to shift my kind of professional identity from a gladiator fighting for causes and a knight on a white horse running in to save the oppressed, to being someone that's a collaborative, cooperative healer, that's working with people that have suffered, may have suffered some wrongdoing, may just be having a dispute with a family member or business, a business competitor, but whoever it was, these folks need healing in their relationship, and they need to be able to find a way to kind of make peace with where they've been and move on. And I really began to see that restorative justice could provide this in a way that the adversarial system that I had been participating in was failing at. So I will then, I think, pass to Karina.
Well, thank you. Well, to think about this, of course, I've been involved in the adversarial system so much that when I started witnessing in my training at EMU, Eastern Mennonite University, and during many gatherings at the European Forum of Restorative Justice, where you can see the common ground of all of us trying to do something better for deserving law. I have been changing some things, some lens, and it takes me to do something that I'm going to do only as an example to show how you can change way of doing things. It was a moment that was very deeply because I was just before a verdict in the courtroom where a father that had been accused for severe crime of sexually abusing his daughter asked to speak, although he had not acknowledged his responsibility through all the entire process. He says that he wanted to apologize his girl. Here in this world, in all the courtroom, it was only the lawyer, the three judges, him, and me. And I felt that someone has to take this voice to this girl and this mother, because, of course, he had been condemned for a long, long time. But I thought that it was not my role, it was not my what I have to do. But after knowing that it's so important for victims to know, to acknowledge the acquaintance, the accountability of the wrongdoer, I took this for me, and I make a meeting with the mother and the girl, and I spoke to her and told her that what had happened. And I think that perhaps that is from the values that can push a little bit for healing and, well, responsibility. That's it, just an example. Now, I think it's Luis.
Okay. Oh, this is fun. Well, I resonate a lot with all that you've said, and especially you, Brenda. So my original view of law was as a set of rules and principles that were supposed to provide us the formulas for us to live in peace once they were respected and enforced. Actually a very convenient perception for a middle-class white cisgendered male like me here in Brazil. Well, this understanding, which was deepened during law school indoctrination, legitimized state authority within me and law as an authoritative discourse. I wanted to be a part of it, to contribute to this idea of peace as something that needed to be imposed by specialists that know things better because they know the law. So I really felt encouraged before taking law school and throughout my life and my journey in law school. I felt encouraged to become this kind of specialist. So my transformation came first through how I was impacted by the professional experience I had as a defense attorney in the Brazilian criminal justice system. And I realized that the House of Justice was not offering procedures and nor delivering answers and decisions that made people feel better. Kind of frustrating their expectations for justice, security, truth, and peace. Maybe somewhat in an immediate way they could provide something, but it was not sustainable. So this negative impact as I witnessed the functioning of the criminal justice system, included victims and practitioners as well, and not to say people being convicted and their families. Otherwise, really, it was something that was, feeding vicious cycles of violence. So it shattered my romantic idea, the idea I had about law. And then I realized that adversarial view on how to deal with conflict was not doing any good. So then I started to experience how important and healthy it was not to label people, not to be judgmental, how important it is to focus on the needs of people and allow them to voice that. As this started to make sense to me, I fortunately came across restorative justice. So now I pass the word to Petra.
Okay, so what I would add is that actually for me studying the law, it was kind of strange because I'm the person for whom it's very difficult to follow a rule when it's not reasonable for me. So I was really having a hard time, and sometimes I am having hard times till now. And I also I could not imagine my future like being a lawyer. I was always picking up topics like connected to social justice and to human rights. And then for some reason at 18 years ago, I ended up on EMU and in a group with Brenda and other amazing colleagues, and Howard introducing us what RJ is, and and the thing was changed somehow, and there was a perspective. And the thing was that it took me some time to understand that actually for me as being a lawyer, RJ is not just about restorative programs as a service where people can meet, but that its principles are really shaking my vision what the criminal law is about. And that in that time, the adventurous journey, I would say, somehow started to really understand that the principles can help us to really reshape the criminal justice in general. So this is where I will stop for now.
Well, thank you. This is fun, as you said, Brenda. I think you're going to ask some questions from the book itself. Is that right?
Yeah, some questions that are addressed in the book that it's really interesting for me to hear from the panelists here, and I've had a lot of different private conversations with them, and it blows me away really when I think about us being all over the world at different periods of time, but having these same kind of revelations, watching what happens in the adversarial system that's focused on punishment, and then being able to see that there's this other approach. And I just have found these conversations to be rewarding and surprising. I think that before, I would have never imagined that things like learning to think like a lawyer and this kind of dehumanizing experience and adversarial experience in law school would be cross-cultural. So it's really, it's exciting and a little disappointing to find out that a lot of this kind of is not just confined to the United States, but it's definitely apparent in other locations. So I think I've heard a little talking about this question a little bit, and I'm going to ask this of Louis and Karina, and if Louis can go first. And the question I would like to ask is, how can lawyers integrate restorative principles in a system without a formal restorative justice program? Petra's talked a little bit about working on some legislation and about programs in the Czech Republic. But, where I practice, there's very spotty processes, very, very few formal processes for restorative justice in the court systems. And so I'd like to hear from you all about what can lawyers do when there is no formal restorative justice program. So we'll start with Louis, and when he finishes, he can pass it to Karina, and then and then I'll pick it back up from there.
Okay, so thinking about my own practice, even before being in touch with restorative justice, and thinking about how I've been working with criminal lawyers as a restorative justice practitioner in the criminal justice system with restorative justice projects, going straight to the point, I think that a very available way is honoring restorative principles in their daily practice. As of now, I think that's more or less intuitive and easy. I mean, not that it's free of challenges, and it is totally available. I think with Brenda's book now more than ever, and there is no need to submit to any procedural rule, official endorsement, or formal programs. So I mean, my point is, I think that the professional practice of the lawyer enjoys more freedom and autonomy than the practice of public or district attorneys and judges. As lawyers, we have to immediately deal with the human needs and impacts of conflict situations from the people that are knocking on our doors, as desperate and lost, as confused as they might be. I think this provides for a much fruitful and creative possibilities for the lawyer to encourage and conduce efforts that may be worked on independently from the justice system and based on the development of relationship networks and community webs that support this type of practice and outcome, restoratively, I mean. So, yeah, I pass the word to Karina.
Thank you, Luis. I have to say that in practical terms, I'm going to talk something about Argentina and Spain. And let's say that, for instance, as a prosecutor working in adversarial systems, as both of that systems are now, they don't leave little room to step outside the script roles, no? So I think that's what happened to me, and this is something that I spread to everybody, to become far more attentive to identify, even in small and solitary moments, opportunity to promote attitudes or actions that support the healing of those that are involved, of taking responsibility, but most of all, to be treated with dignity. So that is something that is a common ground with or without a system that allows it. And now Spain, it's this year, they started with a legal framework for restorative justice and criminal law. So it's going to start in 2 years, but we'll see what's happening there. That's it.
Thank you. And yeah, so I think what I'm hearing from both of you is that you don't have to have a formal program to be able to be a lawyer that practices consistent with restorative justice, that you can be. I think Karina's talking about being attentive and looking for those spots. And Luis talked about knowing the principles and figuring out how they can integrate them. And I will let you know that in the book, you're not going to be able to see the tables, but there's lots of tables that are in the book here. And this is the cover of the book. There's lots of tables that kind of demonstrate, here's the way that a typical lawyer might approach a problem, and here's the way a restorative justice informed lawyer might approach the problem. And so you can be very creative, and it is a matter of being attentive, thinking what's happening now and what do I do to move it along in that continuum. Next question. This is kind of a compound question. So I guess in the United States, this wouldn't fly under the rules of evidence, but he would say that because it is actually asking 2 questions at once, but there's no one here to make an objection, so I can ask it anyway. How does a restorative approach differ from a traditional focus on winning over healing? And given that our cultures often frame legal proceedings in terms of winning and losing, what can help clients embrace goals centered on meeting needs, restoration, and healing? So how does the restorative approach differ with regard to the ideas of winning over healing? And what do you do when clients might come in to see you kind of focusing on the cultural expectation of winning, and yet you're wanting to think about, looking more towards restoration and healing? And so we'll start with Petra, and then she will be passing to Karina on this one.
Okay. So first, I want to say that it's really a great book, and I am so much looking forward when you all will see the good tables that compare the restorative and traditional approach of thinking in law. And what I think that differs, actually. Restorative justice and restorative approach focus on needs, and this is so much connected to the healing or the way that something can be changed. Like when we say that the other side of it is winning, I'm just asking who is winning and what is this person winning. In criminal law, it's we might say it's the state or the state prosecutor, or it would be the offender that goes away with low punishment. And like, what does it bringing to them? What does it bring to the state that just gives punishment that doesn't make change in nobody's life? It doesn't make change for the victim, and maybe doesn't make change for the offender in some positive way, accepting the responsibility and changing the way of his life. So for me, the restorative approach, as I said, is really looking for the ways and decisions that just bring opportunity for all the people affected by crime to reflect and fulfill their needs. And of course, that criminal justice and criminal procedure cannot fulfill them all, but can be a good opportunity, like to reflect on them, and maybe a good point, like how they can be solved further. So when we are like thinking about crime and punishment, the punishment we can even now have ways like how we can reflect in a restorative way about punishment, and we can maybe rather call it in the restorative way like a restorative sanction, but really try to bring up solutions that make sense and meaning and bring the people to the healing. And I'm just thinking like that when you talk about winning, like you are standing there, like you win and you stand there alone, and what does it bring to you? So for me, like what is very important is that the restorative decisions and solutions are a lot based on participation and redressing like harm and strengthening relationships. That's what we probably all know, but reflecting on those principles in law, it's I think very amazing how creative you can be, like how you can process in the criminal procedure, and which solutions you can create, like just thinking based on restorative principles, and which decisions you can do. So for me, it's really following the principle of giving the victim in the center of our attention, and putting the like creating a space where the offender can accept the responsibility, and we can create solutions that support him in accepting responsibility, but also like reflecting on the root causes of the crime. Thank you.
Bueno, at this question, I am thinking about when I read it. I think about what happened and what I see in family matters. As I say, I've been and working for many years in the family court. And in these cases, when you really have, and when you are a family lawyer, there is where you see clearly that you can have all these principles. And as Brenda says in her book, we are not gladiators. We have to be collaborative lawyers if we want the best for our clients, you know. So this is something that in the local bar association with the lawyers, the young lawyers, we try to speak with them in between all of us, thinking about how it's better to heal the harms of people. And at the end of the day, we will see that whatever we arrangement we have is better than being fighting. That's it.
And I want to just comment for a second. I lost my internet connection for a second, and I logged back in. At my internet's out. I logged back in using my hotspot. So if I freeze up, somebody pick up for me and carry on. And we are running a little bit behind, so I'm going to move ahead and ask this question. There's a lot of work being done in the United States about lawyer well-being and lawyer wellness. And I've been kind of frustrated because I feel like when they ask us to do yoga and meditate more, that's never going to mitigate the experience of having to work in a situation where you may feel like you're wandering around in a minefield, trying to take care of a client in a situation that's quite impossible to do so. And so I would like to get a comment from each of you on how might a restorative approach make the practice of law more fulfilling, while reducing disappointment and perhaps mitigating trauma or mitigating secondary trauma that many lawyers experience. And I think you're all going to address this, and we'll just start with Louis and then Petra and Karina. And then soon after that, we'll be asking the audience out there for questions. So you guys get your questions ready. So Louis, you want to take up this question?
Yes, ma'am. Well, I think it's as important as challenging as it is to think about that. Well, I think it goes to the core of what is it for someone to practice law as a lawyer, you know, as we've been talking about and reflecting about it, what is it that took you and moved you to dedicate yourself to this profession? So there's always usually those noble, you know, expectations and you know, wanting to be a part of something important and big. Well, as you practice, you feel that the system is insufficient, and it perpetrates and perpetuates cycles of destructiveness. So I think there is this crisis that I come across usually with colleagues, that they say, well, it's something wrong with it. I'm not feeling fulfilled, and I'm not feeling it's not feeling right to contribute to this. So I think this is a very important moment of crisis, I would say, that brings up an opportunity for you to think harder about how to be coherent with what you want and how you work for it, how you dedicate yourself to it. So I think there's this sense of feeling rewarded when you witness something that is healing, for instance. So at the same time that you see yourself providing to your client an opportunity for him or her to access a healing path, access something that is meaningful, there is this huge opportunity of feeling fulfilled yourself professionally, and preventing yourself to get involved deeper and deeper with procedures that are violent, that perpetuate discourses of being adversarial and dealing with conflict in a not productive way. So at the same time that you may feel fulfilled and feel rewarded by contributing to something that is good and humane, you prevent yourself of, being part of something that is destructive and witnessing how destructive it is. Because even either for a victim or for instance, a police officer that wants to file a lawsuit, you will need a lawyer to be there and take this on him or her. So yes, it's a way to connect yourself to something that you deem very dear to fulfill your life professionally and personally. I pass, I think, to Petra.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. When I was thinking about this question, I think that for me, it's important that I was raised in a country and culture that is somehow rooted in the tradition that when you break some obligation, you just you just get a punishment, and a punishment that has no relationship to the thing that was done. And I think that was very difficult for me for some time in the life to carry on with that. And so actually, I think that was also why I was so attracted to the idea and principles of restorative justice. And that finally I just really felt like that it makes sense, like that for me it's like to see that it makes sense and it has the power to make it better and to make the people feel better around. And that it's just that the principles are rooted in something, in some source that has just healing energy, and you just see it and you just feel it. So that's for me. And I am passing the floor to Karina.
Okay, thank you, Petra. I'm going to be very short. What I want to say about this is that Brenda's humility, recognizing that sometimes all we can do is to try to do our best without assuming responsibilities that are beyond our control. That really, I think that is very restorative, and it reduces secondary trauma in our work. More than that when you are with sensitive cases. And so it reminds me that the responsibility, that's one of the SER's core values, is not about omnipotence or fixing everything. It's about responding with integrity and compassion, whatever we have to do. That's the most I can say.
Thank you. And I just really appreciate, I saw in the comments that someone said something about thank you for, amen to that, the well-being, do it on your own is an impossible system. Thank you for including this point. It's very easy for me to include it because it's part of what brought me to wanting to become a restorative lawyer, because I couldn't stomach watching clients go through what they were going through without trying to find another option. And it is very frustrating to me when I hear about lawyer well-being, and yes, they just put more obligations on the lawyer to be able to do more things, to be able to take care of our well-being. When we need to take care of our well-being, we need to do work that's consistent with our values and consistent with our natural empathetic responses to be able to work with folks. And so I think that the three of you have kind of hit on that at different points and kind of demonstrated, yes, that the restorative, a law practice based with restorative principles actually does contribute to well-being. And if we can move our system to do that, I think we would have an opportunity to have a much healthier bar to be available to help folks with their legal disputes. So we have a few minutes for questions. And so if anybody out there would like to type a question, I would love to hear it. And, when I was in law school, I had this one professor, and if we didn't ask questions, she would just make us all sit there in silence until somebody asked a question. I don't know how effective that is when we're doing a Zoom conference, but
Yeah, I'm not sure. Most of the audience is going to be silent. We won't be able to hear them. But while we wait, I do have a question, if that's okay. I'm curious to each of you if maybe you have one example from your context of something that is exciting along the lines of becoming a restorative lawyer, either in the legal profession or in legal education. Are you seeing restorative practices being incorporated in any context where you are, again, either out in the field or in formal legal education?
I never give up a chance to talk about what we're doing in West Virginia, and so I'm going to take this to do that. In West Virginia, we've got a restorative justice project that's a statewide project, and we're a grassroots project. And so there's not a specific program that's being funded, but what everybody is doing is the same thing we're doing here today. We're studying the principles and values together, and we're figuring out different ways that we can integrate them into our world. And so what I'm hearing that's very exciting to me is that a lot of systems that kind of operate ancillary to court systems are using some circles and using more victim offender dialogue when it's suitable, but especially a lot of circles are being used, which is a restorative, practice, which is the talking circle, as a result of the West Virginia Restorative Justice Project doing this work with principles and values, and folks seeing the utility in expanding the kinds of procedures that we use. And again, it's stuff that's ancillary. It's not what's going in the courtroom, but it's things that are going on outside or right around the corner from the courtroom.
Thanks, Brenda. Other folks?
I know Lewis has got some things going on in Brazil that are some concrete restorative practices that are happening also kind of next door to the courthouse.
Yes. So thank you, Brenda. That's very interesting. I think from the lawyer perspective, what I could say not as a lawyer, but as a facilitator that has participated in restorative practices with the participation of lawyers. I have this very interesting and fascinating example of a case that was judicialized, and it was a criminal procedure of a guy that I'm not sure if this is the right technical word. It was hit and run. He hit a guy. He was driving his car, hit a guy with a motorcycle. The guy fell and died, and he ran away, and he was arrested. So we did this whole restorative practice, and we involved the family of the victim, and the family of the victim had a lawyer as helping them out. First, trying to represent them, and then he realized, I'm here to help them out. And he was it was very interesting because he had never heard about restorative justice, and he made sure to encourage them to accept the restorative invitation. And he was a key piece for us to achieve a restorative outcome. And it was very rewarding for me to witness how he was feeling fulfilled professionally, contributing with this whole effort. So this is something that it's very nice to see and realize how possible and achievable this might be. And thinking about education, for me, it has been kind of surprising to realize that the young people that arrive at law schools, they already come with a mindset, a very structured and rigid mindset of punitivism and adversarial ways of thinking, and of course in law school you only reinforce that. But when you talk about restorative justice, I've never heard about restorative justice during my 5 years in law school. And when you talk about it with them now, they say, well, that's possible. So we can go beyond this traditional, rigid, old way of dealing with conflict that law schools and that the law provides. And that's very interesting. And they feel very much encouraged and excited to explore this path. So I don't know who I pass the word to, Petra?
Maybe I can, in the way, somehow also reflect to some of the comments that I see in the chat. And I would just say, like, what the experience from the Czech Republic, that of course it's important to start the education already on the law faculties, but the experience is that we educate now on the RJ approach based on the principles how I try to describe it today. Also, like all the professional groups that participate on the criminal proceedings. And for many, and it's I would not say that, like, if you haven't learned it on the law school, you are lost. When we try to speak with the all the professions, like many of them, it just makes sense, and sometimes they kind of feel relieved that after the years that they are just kind of stuck in this routine that is not coming with some positive outcomes. And this is like bringing some new energy in their work, and some hope, like that using the restorative principles in their daily work really makes a change to the situation, and that can lead to different solutions, that they will just send offender to the prison, and that's all that will happen. So yeah, that's for me. Karina, yeah.
Yes. Well, I've been reading here to Claudia Mazzucato that make a question, and she's saying that how do you reconcile victim-centered restorative justice with presumption of innocence? This is something that in constitutional law in different countries, it may be a tension in between these two rights. But I think that there may be different solutions, but in the meantime, to see if that is restorative or not, you have to go again to the principles. So if the person has to plead guilty, it has to be, that would bring a consequence in his presumption of innocence. But we do know that the confidentiality, that is another goal that has to have the restorative justice process. So everything that is spoken there is not going to have a consequence if this does not continue in a good way. So, but I know it is a tension between those rights. Something that to point in here.
Well, thank you. I think in terms of question, that may be all we have time for. So I want to turn it over to Brenda for any last thoughts and thanks.
So I'm going to, of course, thank the Zehr Institute for having us here today. Thank you, Howard. Thank you, DeMonte. And I want to encourage the audience to buy the book. And then I want to encourage those of you that are watching who are lawyers to start becoming a restorative lawyer today. You can do that right this afternoon. You can integrate restorative principles in your work. You can do that by listening more carefully, collaborating more intentionally, and then being more open to prioritizing repair over winning. And, doing this discussion today in this panel group has been really exciting to me. And one of the things as I'm sitting here watching us bounce around and passing to one another is I know everybody here, but the other lawyers have not really kind of worked together before. So this is our first time. And to watch this type of a collaboration come together today and watch us be able to dialogue this way without one person, being the leader and just to be able to collaborate in this discussion, to me, is a big step in becoming a restorative lawyer. So I really am very happy to have my friends here. And I was thinking about that song, I Get By With a Little Help from My Friends. And that's what's happened today. So thank you, guys. And go buy the book and get to work being a restorative lawyer. Thank you.
Excuse me. Thank you so much. Thank you again to all of our panelists. I have a few more announcements for you all, if you'll stick around with me for just a moment. Coming up, so this was our last webinar for November, but we have 2 more webinars coming up for you in December. One with Hannah Mason of the Youth Arts and Self-Empowerment Project Healing Futures, Restorative Justice Diversion Program, who will be sharing some insights from their work there in a recent report that's out of Philadelphia. And then we have Dr. Camille O'Quinn, who is faculty at Governor State University, who's going to be presenting on restoring voice, linguistic justice, literacy liberation, and the work of repair, and how she's using restorative justice principles to do some of that very important work. So if you want to register for those, I'm dropping links now for that, and then stay tuned to our different channels to learn more about how to register. Next up, also Petra mentioned the Manifesto for Restorative Justice in Human Rights, which was organized by the European Forum for Restorative Justice and has signatories from all over the world. So if you scan that QR code, and I'll also put a link, you can go and read the manifesto and become a signatory yourself. This really important work of thinking about restorative justice as a deep human right. And then last but not least, as always, feel free to get connected with us. We're always thinking about ways to connect with the broader restorative justice movement all around the world. So if you have something that you want to share with the Zehr Institute community, please feel free to reach out to us. And of course, you can support our work there at that link. So thank you so much again for joining. I hope to see you again in December for those 2 exciting webinars. And I'm wishing you all wellness. Take care.